Hey, welcome back to another edition of Increase. I'm Blake Anderson, excited to be here with you, and I'm glad that you're joining me for another class. And this week we're going to dive into leadership again. You have heard me say before, if you're going to do anything great in this life, you won't do it alone. It will take a team. And so if you would like to increase past your current state, past your current circumstance, then you're going to have to grow as a leader so that you can bring people with you who will help share the load, share the burdens, and expand the things that you are working on. So let's dive right in. I'm going to pray for our time. Father, we just thank you in Jesus' name that you give us the answers to our problems, that you have a plan for us, and you show us how to increase. We pray that our hearts will be open to receive and apply everything we learned today in Jesus' name. All right, so today we are talking about the leadership mistake that stops growth. Did you know that there is one particular category of mistake that a leader can do that can completely stifle and stop their growth? You know, think about times when you have been a leader or you've been on a team. Things got off to a great start. It seemed at the beginning that there was excitement, that we were hopeful of what was possible. Everybody gets started, and then things just started to die down. Things began to stagnate, and results began to lessen. What happened there? What was the problem? Well, it was a mistake the leader made. See, I want you to think about this as a leader. I think there's a misunderstanding about what it takes to grow a business, to grow a project. And we oftentimes think that it takes a brilliant idea, that it takes a revolutionary technology, that it takes a extremely intelligent CEO or founder to grow something. That's actually not it. You see, your growth, your project's growth, your company's growth is going to be a function of your leadership. And so if you make this crucial mistake as a leader, then you're going to see your growth completely stop, stagnate, or go the other way. But hopefully by the end of this class, you'll understand the mistake that maybe you've made in the past that stopped your growth. And I'm going to give you 7 steps that if you'll do these 7 steps, you won't have a problem with growth again. You will see a team step into place that's empowered to help expand everything that you're doing. So let's talk about what is this mistake that stops growth. Well, we find the mistake and we find the strategy right here in the Bible, source of eternal wisdom, and we're going to be looking at Exodus chapter 18. Now, this is a familiar chapter for those that know their Bible history, but in Exodus chapter 18, Moses is leading the nation of Israel out of Egypt. Now, here's the thing you have to understand. Moses may have been a leader early in his life, but prior to leading Israel out of Egypt, he had been a sheep herder in the desert for 40 years. So his only leadership really in that time that we know of was of animals. And so when God comes to him and says, hey, I've got this great leadership task for you to do, he says, I don't think you've got the right guy. You understand, I've been leading animals, not people. I'm not equipped for this process. And God said, actually, you are. I'm going to send you and I'll be with you. So lo and behold, God was with them. The nation of Israel is delivered out of Egypt. They find their way in the desert, and they are on a journey to their promised land. And Moses finds himself overwhelmed because now instead of a flock of sheep, he's got a flock of people, and this a big flock. These are millions of people, and he's the singular leader at the time to lead all of them. And so being overwhelmed by his task, he reveals that his leadership style was one of feeling like he must be present at all times, be all things to all people, and answer all questions and solve all problems for everybody in the nation of Israel. And so in chapter 18, it's a passage from verses 13 through 26. Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, comes to Moses and says, what are you doing over here? And Moses says, well, I spend all day and all night just meeting with the people because they have lots of problems. And Jethro asks him to explain to more, and Moses says, well, whenever they have a matter, they come unto me. Jethro says, this thing that you're doing is not good. See, Moses was making the mistake that was stopping the growth. It was going to stop his growth as leader, going to stop the growth of the people, and they were not going to be able to get to their final destination. Jethro says to him, if you keep doing it that way, you're going to wear these people out and you're going to wear yourself out. You can't do it that way. So if you've heard this passage before, it's been taught it's that it is a leadership example about delegation. But really, what Jethro says, he says more in this passage than just Moses, you need to delegate leaders. That's not near enough. Actually, Jethro gives him a 7-step process in the way to create a structure and a culture to bring leaders into place to help take the burden off of his shoulders. And we're going to get into that tonight. So, what's the mistake that Moses was making? The mistake was by feeling like he was the only one equipped, qualified, or willing to help make these important decisions for all the people, he was creating a dependency where everything in that organization, everything in his nation was on his shoulders, revolved around him. Now, if he was willing to do all of that and make all those decisions, think about everything that it was preventing him from doing. All the other tasks that he had as a leader, plotting the course, finding the way, meeting with other constituents who didn't just have problems. You see, by feeling like he had to make every decision, then he was also preventing himself from doing more that his group needed him. But his largest mistake in this part was he was creating dependency. And Jethro said this is not good. And if you're a leader who feels like you've got to make every important decision in your organization, it's not good. And your growth will stop. No matter how effective you are personally, no matter how much momentum that you feel like you have, the more intertwined and entangled you have to get in all the minute details, the quicker your growth will stop and you will create dependency. So we're going to dig into this problem and this solution a little bit more, and I'm going to be referring for some concepts from this book here, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, John C. Maxwell. It must be in your leadership library. I'm telling you, it must be in your leadership library. And we're going to be touching on a few of the laws in here of the 21, 3 of them. We're going to be talking about law number 1, the law of the lid, law number 12, the law of empowerment, and also law number 20, the law of explosive growth. So in my experience, I've experienced this in multiple ways. Dependency in an organization can actually be created in multiple ways. We often see dependency created from leaders who have a good heart, but also we can see it from insecure leaders. So I think maybe we've all either worked in organizations or seen it in movies where you have a leader who's a force to be reckoned with. Someone who is the driving force, who has to make all the decisions, one that we would say was arrogant and prideful. And the reality is, a leader who's prideful and feels like there's no one that is smart as me, there's no one that understands this business like I do, I can't trust anybody because no one has my capabilities to make these decisions, is an insecure leader. And is a prideful leader. And this is someone who micromanages every task because there's no trust between the leader and their team. Well, if this has been you or you felt like you worked underneath one of those leaders, stick with me. I'm going to give you 7 steps that would empower you as a leader not to feel this way or not to be sucked in to this downward spiral. The other way I've seen this play out is oftentimes through good-hearted leaders who so want to empower people to be able to thrive and help the organization. But they send people off to do things, and when the people come back with the work that they've done, it's not up to standard. It doesn't match what the leader had hoped it would look like, and the leader ends up having to get involved and rework everything that they've done and go back and remake every decision that they've made. So they start with this good heart to want to empower people, but ultimately it comes back to them doing all the work. And so this dependency is really created through poor communication. Now, if you found yourself here, then stick with me. We're going to deal with that. Because ultimately, we're really talking about trust, our trust in our team's ability to make decisions. If you're just a team member, it's a trust built between you and the team leader for you to make decisions on their behalf and to do important things for the project or the organization. And these 7 steps are going to help build that trust, and it's going to alleviate problems that come through poor communication, because I'm going to show you how to communicate the key things that your team needs to be able to do productive work and make critical decisions even without you being there. I'm also going to alleviate the pressures, these 7 steps are, of you feeling like you've got to micromanage people, that uh, no one has what it takes to make the decisions. I think if you'll follow these steps, you'll actually empower plenty of people in your organization to make critical decisions, and it won't require you to be involved in all of them. So we have this mistake, I'm going to write this down, of creating dependency. Creating dependency. And Maxwell says that in the law of the lid, that your organization, an organization is going to be limited to the leader, okay, to the leader's leadership capability and ability. The organization is going to be bottlenecked by the leader's capability. I think we've all worked in this kind of situation before, that the leader ends up stifling the growth. No matter how strong the leader is, if the leader's not careful, they can throttle down the growth or the momentum, and they become the bottleneck. And we're trying to alleviate that. We want to alleviate that by empowering people to make strong decisions. You see, you as a leader should be able to give a project or give a task to people on your team, walk away from it, and trust that it will be done right. Then bring you back their project, bring you back the work that they've done, and you be able to hopefully make just small tweaks or revisions to what they've done and not feel like you've got to rework everything. See, if you've got to do everything for the people that work for you, then why do you bother having that team, right? But we know your growth is going to be limited to the ability of the team at large. So we've got to empower that team to do more. And that's law number 12, the law of empowerment, which says that only secure leaders give power to others. If we want to grow as an organization, we've got to empower people. So like I said before, your success does not hinge on your brilliant idea. Your success doesn't hinge necessarily on your charismatic communication and your ability to preach a sermon or lead a meeting. It doesn't hinge on the amount of money that you have in the bank. Really, your success as a team is going to hinge on the leader's ability to lead more people. The capability of a leader is what the law of the lid says. All right, so what's the results if you continue to make this mistake, right? If we continue to create dependency on an organization, okay, what can happen long term? This is really the warnings that we have to understand. Well, first and foremost, you have to understand that if you continue to be a lid over your organization and you create dependency, then many of your team members will not stay. You see, if you have effective people on your team who are fully qualified and capable, and you don't empower them to give them authority to make decisions, they're going to leave. See, the law of the lid basically says that you as a leader can only lead people who are at your level or under. And so if you get lucky enough to attract a leader who's got a stronger leadership number or capability than you do, if likely they're not going to stick with you. Because if you become the lid over their head, they're going to get frustrated and they're going to leave. So be excited when you get strong leaders come to your team, but understand there's some real responsibility on your shoulders to give them an empowered environment to be contributing members, because ultimately people are motivated to contribute. They've joined your organization, they've joined your project because they see an avenue for them to contribute out of their strengths and their gifts to help a cause greater than themselves. And if you limit their ability to contribute, they're going to get frustrated and they're going to leave. Maybe right now you can start thinking of the really awesome people that you hope would be with you a long term who left after a couple months or maybe only a couple years. Maybe they seem to leave out of nowhere. If you have a strong leader that's left your organization, chances are they left because you put a lid over them. You are creating a culture of dependency, not one of interdependency where they could thrive and offer from their gifts. Okay, the second thing that can happen to your team if you're creating a culture of dependency, you're making this mistake, is that your team will not offer, will not offer. Those strong leaders who haven't left yet will stop offering their creative ideas. I've been in situations, it's super frustrating to be in a situation where a leader says, oh, we value your expertise, we value your wisdom, you have great ideas, and so you take the time to give them great ideas or to help, and those ideas are not implemented, and decisions that you think that you've been empowered to make are being overridden, and new decisions are being made by the leader, and they start becoming a lid. And so guess what? If I'm in a situation where the leader continues to undervalue or rework everything I've done, I'm going to stop offering. Before I leave, I'll probably stop offering. There's a term that's getting thrown around in the workplace these days about quiet quitting, where you're in a job or in a role and you're giving it just your very least. And there's a lot of people that are quiet quitting and don't want to, but they're quiet quitting because their leaders don't value them enough to empower them, equip them to make decisions, give them authority to be a meaningful contributing member of the team. You don't want to run your people off, but if you don't empower them to make decisions, if you don't listen to their feedback, they're going to stop offering, and then ultimately they're going to leave. So third result that often happens from this culture of dependency is the team will end up, it will have ineffective members. See, they're going to stop offering, and then the strong people are going to leave. And so who's going to be left? What kind of person stays in a situation where they're micromanaged? What quality of team member wants to or is willing to continue to just take a basic paycheck and never get to make any real decision? Waits around for his or her leader to tell them what to do. Is willing to sit around and be unproductive and barely contribute because the leader has to make all the decisions. It's going to be yes men and yes women. It's going to be ineffective people. These type of ineffective members, if they're willing to allow you to make all the decisions for them, and if they're willing just to sit there and wait for you to tell them what to do, one, they're going to be wasting your money. Two, they're not going to be expanding the project, and they're not going to really be doing anything meaningful. You'll be reducing them to the lowest wage worker that's necessary for the job, and you won't have talent enough to actually continue to expand your organization. And these are not the kind of people that are going to grow anything great or of any significance. And then finally, the final result of this type of culture, besides the fact that likely your profitability, your results, your momentum has completely died, is the leader is going to burn out. And that's what Jethro told Moses. Listen, this thing you're doing is not good. He says you're going to wear those people out, and you're going to wear out. You create a culture of dependency, and no matter how excited you are to be able to make those decisions and know that it's done your way and it's exactly the way you like it, it's going to be a really small scale project, and it will eventually wear you out, and it will prevent you from continuing to do anything creative. Maxwell says, personal success without leadership ability brings only limited effectiveness. And that's what we're talking about here. If you make the mistake of creating an environment of dependency, no matter how effective that you are as a person, your personal success will be very limited unless you have leadership ability to bring other people to share the burdens and to continue to grow and expand the thing that you're working on. So we've really dug into this mistake. And hopefully by now you've thought about situations that you've been in. So what is there to do about it? What can we do? Clearly it's not as simple as just allowing people to do whatever they want. It's just tacitly accepting every decision that someone else makes. Yes, I'm a leader. I've been in this situation. You can't trust every decision that everyone makes. People do come back with projects that they've done that don't seem to cut the mustard. It doesn't add up or line up to the expectation that you had in your mind, and it's not acceptable work, and it has to be redone. Those situations come up, but what can we do to prevent that from being the norm and make that be the exception? How can we actually empower these people that we think aren't as smart as us? How do we set a culture where we can recruit effective people who can bring their gift and bring their strength to the table and really expand something? See, ultimately, as a leader, you need to be attracting and recruiting people that are stronger than you in the areas you're hiring them to be in. If you're the smartest person in the room, then you likely are going to have a very small organization. As a leader trying to grow a project, you need to understand that you need to grow as a leader to make room for other really strong leaders. You want to make room for experts in their place, in their field, in their gift. Realizing where my weaknesses are needs to be the place where there's a strength of someone on my team. I need to be able to admit this person on my team is much better at this than me. That's why I'm bringing them on. I need to be a secure enough leader to empower them in that way. And so I'm going to do a quick plug for another book. This must be in your leadership library. 6 Types of Working Genius. This book really dives into the 6 different personality types when it comes to teamwork. And you have to understand, it helps you identify what your strengths are, but also helps you identify what your weaknesses are. It's so important to know to be self-aware, to know really what your superpower is, what your gift is, how you help. But then you got to understand what it's not so that you can make room for someone that has what you're missing and then you can empower them to do what you can't. Okay? All right. So let's get into the 7 steps. Now, these 7 steps are in a linear fashion and they build on each other. So I want you to take notes, and you'll find the notes in the description. I'll have a link to the show notes where you can download these and take more of your own. I probably could do a whole weekend seminar just on these 7 steps. But I'm going to just be very concise about it, and I think they're going to be self-explanatory. The other thing I want you to understand about these steps is the 7-step process. But if you find that things in your organization are starting to throttle down, you're losing momentum, maybe things aren't growing like you want, you might look and see which of these 7 steps are you not fully doing, which one needs to be improved. So, 7 steps to promote trust and growth. We're trying to create a culture of trust where these people that you are leading don't have to be micromanaged. A culture of trust where when you give someone an assignment, they come back with some work that looks like what you have expected it to look like. You don't want to be a leader that micromanages, but you also don't want to be a leader that that doesn't empower people with everything that they need. So step number 1, and these are all in Exodus chapter 18, 13 through 26, the 7-step process that Jethro gave Moses. Jethro didn't just say, delegate your authority. No, he gave them a 7-step process. You'll have to really study that Bible verse. So I'm going to give you the 7-step process that Jethro gave Moses. I've used this in my own organizations. I've experienced this both because I've failed to do it, but also when I've learned how to get it right. And trust me, the growth of your organization will be a function of your leadership. All right, step number 1 that a leader must do to create a culture of interdependency, a culture of trust and growth, is you must establish the culture. Before you do anything else, you must establish the culture. Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Let me say that again. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. No matter how brilliant your idea or your strategy is, if you have a poor culture, it will go nowhere. So the first thing you must do is you must establish the culture of your company, your organization, or your team that you are leading. And we establish this culture by establishing what's the principles that we live by. What's our core values as a team? What is our mission? What are we trying to accomplish? What is the overarching culture? You establish these values and these principles, and it's not just for you. They must be communicated to your people. Ultimately, you want your folks to know when you're not around, when in doubt, do it this way. If I'm writing an email on the behalf of Blake, how should it sound? Well, Blake values integrity. He values transparency. He values service, care, and love. Whatever they are, establish your core values and communicate them to their team. You don't want them to have any second thoughts about what their work should look like or sound like, how they would interact with the outside world. So establish the culture. Second thing that you need to do is you need to set the expectations. It's not enough just to say, you're empowered, go do it. We trust anything you do. I've been a part of teams where they've pointed team leaders and said, we trust you guys, just go make it happen. And the team come back and the leader said, well, it really needs to look like this. And the team said, well, what do you mean? You told us just to make a good decision. Yeah, I know, but I really wanted it to look like this. See, it's not enough just to expect that they're going to do it your way, to just assume that it's going to be done to your standard. Take the time to set the expectation. What is the vision or the long-term goal that we're pursuing? What does success look like for this exact project? How do we know when we've met the standard? Set the expectation when you delegate the task. Third thing is we need to define the work. This looks like process and procedure. Okay, so we've established our culture. This is the values and this is the way that we're going to behave. Okay, we set the expectations. Success looks like this. Now we're going to define the work. We're going to give them a process. You're going to do it by doing this. I want a report with it laid out like this. I want assignments delegated, and I want people to check in once a week with their progress. And then ultimately, when it's done, it should look like this. Define the work. Show them the process that you expect them to use, the procedures that you expect them to do to complete the work. Don't assume that the way that they will do on their own is the way you want them to be done. If you want it typed up and handed to you in physical paper, tell them that. Don't assume that they will automatically do it that way. If you want them to send you an email, they need to be told that. Don't assume that they'll know to communicate to you in the way that you expect. So define the work. Fourth, if you do these, first you have to do these. We haven't even started talking about your team yet. These things have to be done before you can even bring on the team. Fourth is to recruit quality people. Recruit quality people. All right. This is step number 4, because if most people just immediately start recruiting people. But how do you know whether you're recruiting the right people for the team, the right person for the role, right person for the job? If you haven't established a culture, how do you know whether they fit in that culture? If you haven't set expectations, how do you know that they have what it takes to get it done? If you haven't defined the work, how do you know that they even have the skills and are willing to do the job? So first, you have to establish a culture before you hire anyone or bring anybody to a team. You need to know what the expectations, what's the goal that you're trying to accomplish, and then you need to define the work. Now you can recruit quality people. And the people that you're looking for have the character that is a fit for the culture that you've established. Okay? You're looking for quality people whose character fits your culture. You bring on someone who's your buddy, you might find out that as much as I like hanging out with this person, I actually don't have the character that fits with my culture. My culture is a Christian culture. And so I'm really careful about bringing on people who are also Christians. It's not that I don't trust people that aren't, but I understand that the way I think, the way I do things, the way I know whether I can really trust someone is that they're a believer and they prescribe to the wisdom from this book right here, from the Bible. that they trust God with their life, with their provision, and that they live in a way of forgiveness and grace, right? And so, but I have to know what that culture looks like to know whether the person that I'm meeting with would fit in that culture or not, okay? Fifth thing, so you've got to finally found the right person, and they're ready to succeed, right? Now, you've got to create a chain of command. A chain of command. People must know who do I answer to? Who do I report to? Who do I need to give my results to? Who's going to be giving oversight and checking in? What is the communication, lines of communication between everyone on the team? There's got to be a chain of command. Jethro told Moses that you've got to divide the people up into thousands, into hundreds, into 50s, and into tens. You see, one person can only effectively lead a small group of people. If you have a large organization, then there's got to be a chain of command where it all works up. So it ends up being leaders leading leaders. So law number 20 in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership is the law of explosive growth. And in that law, Maxwell says, if you just want to add growth, then you'll lead followers. But if you want to multiply, then you've got to lead leaders. As for your organization to truly grow, there must be a chain of command that empowers leaders to lead other leaders who are leading other leaders, and the organization can continue to get bigger as leaders are empowered to lead other leaders. So you must create that chain of command. The sixth thing is finally you need to delegate the authority. You see, most leaders who are making this mistake, it's not so much that they're not willing to delegate authority, right? Many leaders that I've worked with have a real heart to want to delegate authority. They love the people that are on their team. They trust their character. They want them to be able to help out and contribute, and they also just need help. And so they're quick to delegate authority. But oftentimes they delegate authority. The person given the task and entrusted with the responsibility comes back with something that's unacceptable. Now, who's to blame there? Who's to blame for unacceptable work? Well, if you've been given a clear scope of work and clear expectation, then it's probably the person that was given the task. But many times I've seen the blame actually goes to the leader because oftentimes the leaders don't take the time to communicate this. So if you've been given delegated authority, but your leader didn't establish the culture or the way that the work needs to be done, if they didn't give you a clear goal and expectation of the standard of the work that you're to do, if they didn't give you the process or the procedure, then how were you to have known exactly what it was going to look like? I want you to listen really close. This is the biggest mistake that I see that creates this dependency is we're quick to delegate authority before we've done steps 1 through 5. You're not effectively ready to delegate authority until you've given these people on your team an environment to succeed in, until you truly empowered them. Okay? But if you will do steps 1 through 5 before you delegate that authority, then you create an environment for success. Then your team members know exactly what it's supposed to look like. They know exactly when it needs to be done. They have your heart. They're going to make the decisions that represent your culture. The language and the wording is going to sound like you want it to sound. You're going to be very pleased. You likely will just make minor revisions to what they've done. And then ultimately, your job will be to help in the greater matters. Step 7, if you've done steps 1 through 6 right, then you won't be involved in small decisions. Your team will be thriving making those decisions without you. You will help with the greater matters. Isn't ultimately that's our goal? Every leader who brings a team together, who delegates authority, what are you hoping will happen? You're hoping that you can relieve yourself of the micro decisions, of the day-to-day, of the minute details, so that you can continue to work on the important things that will grow the organization more. That you can continue to work on the things that you're good at, that you're getting off your plate in your shoulders, the small things. You want to work on the greater matters. But you won't be able to work on the greater matters if you don't have a team that's empowered to work interdependently and to be able to achieve the same results, if not better than you, without you. So we don't want to make the mistake of creating dependency. We want to create an environment for success where the people that are on our team understand our culture. They know the heart of our organization. They understand our core values and the way that we do things, how to behave, where they are very clear about the expectations of the task. They know exactly what it should look like when it's finished and what success looks like. They have a clear method of process and procedure. Their work has been defined and they're ready to do it without you. They're not having to check in every other day. My email doesn't work. Should I text? Should I email? Should I phone call? No, they've been given a process and a procedure to be able to complete that task without you being involved. You've been able to put quality people in place who are a good character fit for your culture, who have the gifts and skill sets to do the work. You've created a chain of command where they don't have to bring every decision to you. They know how to work together as a team, and you've given delegated authority for people to make decisions on your behalf. And then finally, you're only involved in the greater matters. You see, with these 7 steps, not only will you be able to right the wrongs and the mistakes you've made that stopped your growth, you're going to start creating a culture that can expand. You're going to raise your leadership lid, and you're going to see your organization begin to thrive and prosper, and you'll see momentum gain, and likely you'll have created an environment that's getting larger, that's attracting more and more leaders, and leaders will be leading leaders, and you will experience what Maxwell calls explosive